You are listening to a podcast by the Little School of Happiness. My name is Sandra Hayes and I'm your host. Here you will find episodes on all the Vedic teachings like yoga, Ayurveda and Vedic Astrology. For more information about me and my offerings, please go to sandrahayes.eu, or if you're in Germany, sandrahayes.de. Hi again, Aoife. How are you today?
Hi, Sandra. Happy Guru Purnima today. It's a very auspicious day to be talking to you.
Very, very much, yes. And yeah, we just at the very start, both of us will give a shout out to Marianne, our wonderful teacher, and really the biggest inspiration in my life, I think. You know, she's the one who brought us on this journey. And she's the one who's continuing to really, really inspire us. I don't know, even we don't have classes with her anymore, but still, you know, I think of her often and I wish we could just continue the classes forever. But
perpetual students. We are her perpetual students. But we also share another teacher in common, David Collins.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah, David Collins, our wonderful yoga teacher, and Paula Herbert.
Yeah, so I reached out to both of them, Marianne and David.
Yeah.
Because today, Guru Purnima, of course, is the day where, it's the brightest, it's midsummer, but it is the brightest full moon of the year. And so this beautiful radiant full moon in Sagittarius is the day where we thank our gurus, our teachers, our mentors, people that have deepened our practice. And actually, when I reached out to David and Paula, they sent a lovely message back about how we're all just walking each other home. Oh,
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And, you know, these teachers, Marianne and David and Paula, and a lot of the other teachers as well, I think, the most wonderful teachers to me, they're those who they don't have a big following. They don't have a massive presence online, and they're not necessarily, well known on a world stage, but they are such genuine and authentic people who I feel they see us, and they can guide us in real authenticity, which is absolutely wonderful. But I also, all the other teachers as well that I hardly maybe think of anymore because maybe they were just in my life for a short time, all of them actually provided something. And for me, especially today, because I finished with a 3-year training today. I passed my final exam today, which is great, in creative therapy and dance movement therapy. So
congratulations. We were talking about this. It's like, what next? Because I'm the same. It's like, what next?
I know. And you're just like me, there always has to be some kind of a course in our life, some teacher. And
I'm saying that I woke up yesterday and decided, that I wanted to be a Jungian psychotherapist, and I've been Googling that ever since.
I know. Yeah, do it. I know, it's just, and these kind of things go so well together with the study of Jyotish. And it actually brings me now to the subject that we wanted to talk about today, which is the Rahu Ketu axis. And it brings me to that because I have been doing a lot of work in the sense of creative therapy. And I've come across different methods during my training. One of the methods is IFS, Internal Family Systems. I'm sure some people will be familiar with that. It's a system where you look at the internal parts that are in all of us. We all have a self, a true self, and then we have different kinds of parts in us that have appeared at some stage in our life. Maybe, we might have been, as a child, we might have been in situations where we're not in our full strength. We're dependent on other people, and we've learned behaviors that are managing behaviors that are there to support us or to help us in emergency situations or in difficult situations, and these behaviors might stay with us and take the place of the true self. And I've looked at a lot of that in the context of the Rahu Ketu axis in the chart, because the Rahu Ketu axis really shows us our path, our soul's path from where we come from. And I looked at Ketu as the exile part. That's a part that we, at some stage, it's an old wound that we might, we might suppress. That on one side gives us a lot of strength because it's where we come from. It's the wound that we've been through and where we come from. And it gives us a certain amount of mastery of our life now, but also it brings some unresolved issues with it as well. And that propels us toward the opposite, which is Rahu. Rahu is the future, and the manager often maybe, the kind of, behavior that is seeking the balance. For example, if we have an attachment wound from childhood, then we might, with Ketu in the first house, for example, and then we have Rahu then automatically in the seventh house of relationship, and then we might seek the feeling of connection in relationships. So that's one way of, interpreting that path. And then interestingly, in the D9, that whole path is just deepened through a bigger axis, a finer kind of lens that spans our ancestral wounds, or maybe, karmically goes back over many lifetimes, which is really interesting to look at as well.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I suppose we've already done a full episode on Rahu and Ketu individually. Yeah. But just to highlight the fact that it is always in an axis, there are always 7 houses apart. They're always aspecting each other. And as you just explained, like in simplistic terms, Ketu is or you didn't explain it in simplistic terms, I'm just saying that Ketu is our past, our past lives. And the way that I would look at that in a chart is to look at, what we're actually comfortable with, because we were quite comfortable with that in a past life. Perhaps that's where our energy was, and coming into this manifestation, it is said that we come in because of Rahu. Rahu is looking forward, and this is what we need to resolve in this lifetime. So whether it's a 1-7 axis, which is to do with self and relationships, because relationships are a mirror of the self mirrors into relationships, or perhaps it's a 4-10 axis, which is to do with home and vocation. You can see how there's a pull of energies here. What are you comfortable with, and what is your soul desiring to resolve? Because Rahu is all about this resolution of this karma. And why do we look to where it is, what house it's in, what constellation? Because it's plain to see, if you know what you're looking at, what does that house represent in the area of your life that you have to explore, to remove the veils of illusion. It's all about spiritual evolution. This is the work that we have to do. Ra is sun, Hu is veil, and we need to remove that veil. And so this can be a challenging house. Look at the constellation, the energy of the constellation it's in. It will start to speak to you. And the interesting thing is, it's often a blind spot. It's a blind spot because it is confusing. I think sometimes we can have the veil removed, the blinds can go up, we can see people for who they are, we can see our situations for who they are. But then we have another dark night of the soul. There's always more depth, more to discover, and it's calling us. It's always calling us.
Yeah, exactly. And the point of it is not that we deny either of it, but to integrate it. It's like in the beautiful mythology of the Vedic mythology, where so often it's about the asuras and the devas, the demons and the gods. And if they ever want to get anything out of the milk ocean, then they have to work together. It's not possible, to work separately. There's so many stories about them being at war and battling against each other, one side against the other. But if they want to be eternal, if they want to have liberation and get the nectar of immortality, then they have to work together. They have to merge. And it's the same in the chart. It's not about, demonizing either of them, but to me, they are a little bit also of a tool or a possibility to integrate things into our life, to really solidify and manifest things that we've learned spiritually into our life. And Rahu, if I see Rahu now, if I compare Rahu to a manager part, in IFS therapy, which is why I think it's so beautiful, all the parts are good. Every single part in us is there for a reason and is trying to help us toward being whole again. And Rahu is doing the same, even though he might give us illusions but that's only because he's trying his best, but he's not the true self, So, but he's pointing the way, and we have to go through it. We have to, he's pointing the way toward the areas where we have to grow. We just have to go through it and go to Earth school and make all the mistakes and grow out of it and then integrate it. It's a hero's journey. To me, all of life is a hero's journey. And it's Ketu and Rahu, they're pointing us into the right direction of that.
And you talked of the symbology there. Of course, it's the churning of the ocean. They had to work together to churn the ocean to find this Amrita.
Yeah.
And I think that's very representative of the inner turmoil and the inner churning. It needs to be stirred up. We can't just go blindly through the mundality of life.
Exactly.
And this is the gift it can give us. And it's heightened at different times, of course. We can have a nodal return, which means that the nodes are returning to where they were in our birth chart. And they stay there for a long period. So 18 months is the length of time that the nodes stay. And then they're always very slippery, aren't they? They're mysterious. So they almost, I remember Marianne saying this to us, like when we're trying to get a grasp on them, they won't quite let you fully get a grasp on what's involved here and what they truly represent, because they're Chia Graha. They actually are shadow planets, angles of the moon. They don't have any gross format. They're mathematical angles with the power to eclipse. And this is why we see it represented as a serpent, the serpent eating the sun. Rahu eating the sun. And so it's like the Bhagavad Gita. It's this battlefield, this inner turmoil for realization, consciousness, and transformation that we are called to do. And sometimes it's kicking and screaming, but if we trust in, as you say, the beautiful order of what is to unfold, and we allow ourselves to go there. And maybe that's why we're constantly wanting to study more. I mean, knowledge is power, right? You're just finished with your psychotherapy. A lot of this to do with the mind and the internal machinations of the mind. It's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, this, I think what is very important, I think, for all of us to keep reminding us to all the time is that this journey from Ketu to Rahu, this hero's journey, it doesn't go without struggle and suffering and without, like you said, the dark night of the soul, because it's only then where we can transform. And I often liken it to that moment in, when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, that moment of complete disintegration. There is no identity anymore. And that has to happen in any transformation. We have to lose our identity. And there is no circumstance anywhere in the world in our lives where losing your identity is easy and fun, So it's always to do with, fear and loss of self, and and often a large amount of fear even, and fear of death of the ego, and death of the body often as well. So, but it's just a part of the process, and we have to learn to take it as a part of the process. And like you said, the more we can be aware of it, the more we can have a trust that this is one step of the journey, and we will come out of that step into the next step. Then, the easier it will be.
And Rahu is not all bad, because Rahu is insatiable.
Yeah.
He brings abundance and wealth, potentially fame and money, all the beautiful materialistic things, because in order for Rahu to teach you that none of this actually has any value, sometimes you acquire it all through Rahu, and it can give you that sense of, sometimes abundance gives you a sense of freedom until, it takes away fear of lack, and it can provide for you in a really beautiful way. And then the balance of that, of course, is that the tail of the serpent is all about detachment.
Yeah.
Exactly. And strong Ketu energy. Ketu has one foot in the world and one foot out the world. So you can't have, Ketu doesn't aspect any planets. Ketu is fascinating to me. He's very strong in the charts of very spiritual people. Not all of us want to be renunciates. I'm not including myself in that, not yet anyway, but to give up all worldly desire, that's a very strong and powerful thing.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, though, I will say, after having come out of 7 years of Rahu, I feel like the world has come into technicolor again for me. The physical world has, like a tsunami, crashed back into me, because I really think I was very detached and in a beautiful spiritual place, but actually kind of otherworldly, and not in connection with the beauty of the everyday world. And so I would see that as a gift of Rahu. It may be a little bit maybe isolated and a little bit removed from the world, but I was quite happy there, Sandra. I was very happy there. But now I can't be, because I'm coming to the end of Ketu. I'm taking that with me, hopefully, and I'm back in the world, and it's like I have this cinematic view and everything is beautiful, and
you're coming into your Venus now, aren't you? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful. What a beautiful contrast as well. I actually read, I can't remember what book it was, but I remember reading, I can't think of which book it was now, but it was a sentence that stuck to me, that Rahu was likened to a lawyer, because, he will represent anyone. He will represent a criminal as well as a saint. And he will fight for that person, and he will try and, so he amplifies whatever it is that we have, whatever desires are there, and whatever the other planets in the chart might give us, or maybe our data might give us. But he is whoever he aspects as well, he will amplify it, and he will just make it stronger and more manifest in this world as well.
If Rahu is, I suppose his aspects are interesting, because he aspects more than a lot of planets. Some planets only have 2 aspects. Rahu has a lot more of that. And so I find that when I'm reading charts, I'm having to include this Rahu aspect into a lot of different houses and upon a lot of other different grahas. And yeah, he can certainly amplify. But another thing to consider about Rahu is he is a higher octave of Saturn. And Rahu is about, it's air, and it's the energy of this, it can be challenging, but if we look at the placement of where he moved into from the 29th of March, he's in Aquarius. He's really very happy there. And I think we're really seeing in the world this Rahu energy of freedom, striving for freedom, looking forward, it's futuristic. And we can see this play out in the world. And I think maybe we can, depending on what house it is, we might even feel that pull towards whatever freedom represents to you as well in your chart.
Yeah, he's the lawyer of the people at the moment, the societies and people in general, rather than the kings on the other side, the politicians and the leaders, which is where Ketu is at right now. So that's a very interesting placement. We'll watch the space in the next while.
Yeah, because as we've talked about previously, the fireworks are, they're building and building. They're about to go into exact conjunction, which is Ketu, which is a higher octave of Mars, with Mars in Leo, together in Leo, which is the sign of the king. So we can see that conflict on the world stage right now.
Yeah.
Who wants to be king?
Yeah.
You can probably name 3 people, 4 or 5, handful of people who think that they have the right to be regal in this world and seize power, as opposed to our voices as we stand up and be heard and look to democracy. It's a very pivotal time. And often when, the nodes move, it is a pivotal time on a precipice.
Yeah. Yeah. And
sorry.
No, go ahead.
It just seems like a good time to mention Kala Sarpa.
Yeah, I was just going to do that too. Yeah.
Great mind. So Kala Sarpa is a really interesting, mysterious yoga. So Kala Sarpa means that you're caught in the serpent of time. I mean, even the implications of that is, like, if we look at the symbology of the serpent in all ancient traditions, it's very interesting to consider. But this celestial serpent is at this very moment, from April just gone until later on this month, we are caught in the celestial serpent, which means that all of the 7 grahas, the other 7 planets, are hemmed in by Rahu and Ketu. So if we were to look at the chart of the world right now, we would see that all of the planets are caught up in the nodes. Now, I've seen this once in a birth chart. It's quite unusual. And it does mean that you're going to have an unusual life. You can't be caught up in the nodes of time and just have a ho-hum life. This is big karmically. This is all about karma. But if we think about the squeeze, I compare it to, the serpents that wrap around you and squeeze the life out of you. It feels like, they're being hemmed in. There's pressure. Now, it doesn't stay stable for all of this time, because the moon is a very fast moving planet, and the moon will, continue to move around in and out
at that moment,
and break it. But until the end of this month, we are caught in this celestial serpent, in this Kala Sarpa. Yeah. And it is heightening everything for us on the world stage, but as above, so below. If you're having a nodal return, if those nodes in your birth chart, if you look at your birth chart and Ketu is in Leo and Rahu is in Aquarius, you're in nodal return. You could be in a reverse nodal return, or a lot of my clients recently who've come to me are just starting into a Rahu or Ketu dasha. This is going to be very intense.
Yeah.
And the intensity we want to embrace, I think, because it's going to happen anyway.
Well, it's not just, it's intense, but it's also an opportunity. And what people sometimes forget, I think, is that when we go into a dasha of a planet that's generally called malefic, that planet gives us a certain strength as well. It's like I've just recently, I'm in Venus dasha at the moment, but I've been in Venus Saturn for pretty much exactly the amount of time that I took to study. And Saturn gave me a lot of discipline, and I really did, sit and study. And since a couple of weeks, I'm now in Venus Mercury, and I can feel it so much. I feel a restlessness now, and I feel I don't really want to study a lot now. I feel more creative. I have Mercury, a debilitated Mercury with an exalted Venus together. So I feel really creative at the moment. And I'm coming up with a lot of things, but I'm not patient to sit and study. So Saturn really, he's given me a lot of discipline. Yeah, he's not a fun planet, but I still felt really good sitting and wanting to do the study. And, other people who are in a Rahu dasha, for example, they might feel, oh, now I can take on the world. Now I can make changes. Now I can, transform my life. And that's the planets who they give us this feeling. It's coming, they're internal aspects of ourselves. So it's not some force from the outside, cracking the whip, but it's actual aspects of ourselves. So it's coming from in us that we feel like doing these kind of things, which is a big difference, I think. It's an important difference. But, it's interesting for people as well with the Kala Sarpa Yoga. And there's different degrees of Kala Sarpa Yoga. And what we have now is not the highest degree, because the planets are not evenly distributed, because otherwise it would literally look like a serpent, like an unbroken serpent with a head and a tail, snaking around half of the chart. But it still is Kala Sarpa Yoga, except for the moon is breaking it at the moment. So technically right now it's not one, but it still has that energy. And I've had quite a lot of charts. Now, I've never had a full-on first degree Kala Sarpa, but I've had quite a few charts of an almost Kala Sarpa with one planet breaking it. And that planet becomes often very significant, because this planet is literally the one that balances everything out, or that has the potential to keep you sane or to balance everything out. I do have one person in my life with a Kala Sarpa Yoga, and with his permission, I can talk about his chart as well as my partner. He has a Kala Sarpa Yoga, also not a full degree one, although the planets are quite evenly distributed, but he has Venus in the same sign as Rahu, in a different degree, in a lower degree, but it's still in the same sign, so it still counts as a Kala Sarpa Yoga. I think it's like a third degree or something like that. I'm not quite sure. And this is really interesting, because these people with the Kala Sarpa Yoga in the birth chart, there's such an urgency in their life. There's such like a karmic urgency, and this is literally, in his case, and he has the planets, because it makes a difference as well, whether the planets are on one side or the other. So in his case, Rahu is, so the planets are moving from Ketu to Rahu, which is a little bit, it says in the books, I remember reading that it's a little bit more difficult when it's like that. But, and in his case, the axis is 5th and 11th house, Rahu in the 5th, and Ketu in the 11th house. And this would amplify everything in the chart as well. And he has a lot of planets in the 4th house as well. And so this is, for him, his journey, it's all about belonging. Belonging in groups in the 11th house, belonging at home in the 4th house, and finding himself and his own identity. And this has been his life, literally. He's born in Spain, emigrated to Germany as a child with his parents, was sent back to Spain again, was sent back to Germany, didn't speak the language, was the foreigner. And this is, then creates the exile again, that creates the journey, the path of life that propels him forward to an eternal search of, where do I belong? Who am I really? And that's a really big theme in his life. And interestingly, the Venus that breaks it just slightly is the women in his life. They have been, whether it's his sister or his relationships he had in his life, or also his mother even as well. It's always women who steady him out, who balance him out. So that's a really, really interesting chart. Sorry, I've talked a long time now.
That's fascinating because, we have all these principles, but like to see them play out and to be able to study somebody's life and their inner context, it brings it alive.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of what we do, isn't it? Like, how lucky are we to be able to contextualize what we're learning and to see it play out in the people around us and our clients.
Yeah.
The Kala Sarpa, though, it's funny because it's not in the older texts. It's not in Parashara's texts, but I still think it really does play a factor in somebody's life if they have such a potent combination.
Yeah.
And really through the work that we do when we explore it and through talking to people about their life experiences, rather than guessing how something might manifest, it becomes so clear. And then our knowledge deepens. So how lucky are we?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the other thing about a Kala Sarpa Yoga is that even though it might be difficult for the people who have it in their chart and feels intense, and they might have also a life, full of perceived challenges, but there is also an incredible potential there to really, make a break in their spiritual journey. It's almost like I imagine this, soul incarnating through lifetimes. And in this lifetime, the Kala Sarpa, that's the time where it really switches, where it really, something breaks open and something is really, really turning the switch toward a higher consciousness. And I can actually see that in my partner as well, which is really interesting.
And a very strong Rahu is on the world stage. I mean, I've talked about how, yes, it can bring wealth. Fame is really linked. Toxins as well. So addiction because of this insatiable, but why are people famous?
Yeah.
Yes, it's talent, but it's an insatiable need to maybe be acknowledged or seen, or there's a lot of talented people in the world. What makes people famous? There's something of this Rahu energy in a lot of the charts of famous people. And we were lucky enough that during our mentorship, we studied a lot of famous people's charts because they tend to be very strong, don't they? Like there's very clear pointers as to what we're looking at. And especially actually the British royal family. Do you remember how strong the nodes are?
Absolutely. That was fascinating. Almost everyone has a really strong Ketu in their chart, and the nodes, it's very fascinating.
Yes, because this is, karmic, it's ancestral. They are, whether they want to or not, put, in the face of the world, in a position of power. And of course, depending on the balance of the rest of their charts, it becomes apparent how comfortable they are in this position or not. But it's whether it plays out obviously in that way in your own chart or not, it's going to really help you to understand where your desire is. So you could say that Rahu is about desire and Ketu is the opposite of that. And you gave the beautiful example of your partner, this 5-11 axis. The 5th house is to do with children, with creativity. And the 11th house is to do with Sangha and community. So there's going to be some karma associated, some big themes. Like, you know, when you try to find confluence in a chart and what's the theme here, you can't solidify it into one word. That's too reductive. But I find that, okay, let's look at where the nodes are. That will give me a kind of an overriding karmic theme. And then some of the other planets will be playing out more on a not so much a karmic level. Well, they're all to do with karma, but more on the level of knowledge, of wisdom. But like, what is this life about? I have Rahu in my 9th house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, higher purpose and dharma. It's like, oh, this is, I'm constantly, I'm searching.
Yeah.
It really is a drive.
It's your life's goal as well. You know, it's just the area where you are in this life, you're exploring, and it's a beautiful placement. And also, I think, you know, this is one example where a Rahu in the 9th house, it can play out so differently depending on your consciousness and what you make of it. This is the lawyer again. You know, he's an advocate for, you're a very spiritual person and you're a seeker of truth and authenticity, where, you know, there are some people, and I remember, I think it was actually Hitler who had Rahu in the 9th house as well. And that's a very different life he led. But there was the illusion of the spiritual path, because didn't he also, you know, he had a Vedic background in some way. He was, you know, using the swastika, it's a Vedic symbol. And he was vegetarian, and he, you know, talked about
he was deeply interested in mysticism and the occult.
He was very interested in it, but he was very, you know, misguided, and he had a lot of illusions about it. And Rahu really amplified that for him as well, you know. So it plays out in very different ways. It's definitely an area. It's always going to be an area that we have to explore, and that we have a very strong pull toward. But how it plays out, it, you know, everything depends on whether we are conscious of it, or how much.
This is the irony. So, as you say, it's smoke and illusion. So, if it's smoke and illusion, and we're trying to unpick the meaning, I would say personally, looking at my own chart, there is always this layer of illusion, for one. Like, I just can't, it's very difficult to, and this is the beauty of studying a chart. You know, you could study it and look at the layers and depth of it for many lifetimes. But I wonder if your partner had the same Vedic training, could he interpret his chart in the way that you have interpreted his chart for him? I think our journey in this lifetime, regardless of how much we've studied and the keys that we hold to this information, they're slippery, aren't they? They're still slippery. Like, I'm still trying to really fully resolve and sit with exactly what that means for me. And maybe that's the point.
Yeah, exactly. That is the point. Yeah. And I honestly, I think that's exactly, you said it. That's the point, because we can sit, you know, on our chair or on our yoga mat and theoretically, you know everything, and be very, you know, spiritually involved while we are sitting in lotus on our cushion. But then going into the world, that's a completely different thing. We have to be, you know, getting our hands dirty, and we have to make mistakes, and we have to try things out, because the language of humanity is action. It's not words, it's action, the language of the soul, of our evolution, why we are in this dimension at all. We learn things and we manifest things through our action. And if the action isn't there, then we're not complete with our journey, with our learning and transformation. And so, yeah, we have to just dive in.
We have to dive in, but isn't one of the associations with Ketu? I mean, we talked a lot about Rahu here. Ketu is supposed to be the most spiritual of planets. Yes, maybe it's connected to the renunciate, and it's very separate in its own way, but it's described as the knife edge between enlightenment and insanity.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, as we explore and experience what it can feel like when this Ketu energy is heightened for us. It's like, am I going mad? Or am I shedding something? Or am I having a realization?
Yeah.
And this is why, we are lucky that we have the structures that we have in place. So you've just finished doing your beautiful training, which I suppose you consider like it's Western, isn't it? It's in terms of understanding the mind. And it allows us to have a structure around how we can manage this process.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think those structures are blending more and more. It's it's Western, but I think more and more Western therapists are now influenced by Vedic teachings or ancient teachings. Even in my training now, in those 3 years, we've had several methods taught from shamanism, or from or even what you're talking about, Jungian therapy. That's archetypes, and a lot of it is coming from these old Vedic traditions as well. So I think it's blending more and more, and that's really, really interesting.
And science is catching up as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Science is catching up to the Vedas, yeah.
Totally, yeah. We're coming more and more to a place where all of it is coming together, and there is no more. I think we're only one element away anyway from it all coming together, because I think the difference between Vedic science and Vedic knowledge and Western science now is only consciousness. Once Western science recognizes consciousness, then it will all blend, because then we know there is consciousness in everything, and that's the one element I think that's maybe still missing. But I think that even Western science is getting closer and closer. And but coming back to the Rahu thing, I just wanted to add to that, because what I think is the beauty of seeing it like that, seeing life itself as a spiritual playground that we just have to dive into. It also means that whatever we've done in our life so far, it was not wrong. It was important. And it doesn't matter how, we think in our heads, oh, we've done this wrong or that wrong, or we made mistakes, or, and I mean, I've not had a linear life either. And I've, had many situations where I could think, oh my God, but looking at it from this perspective, there can't be any regret, because this is the learning curve. This is, what eventually brings us to many, many realizations. And we couldn't have these realizations if we didn't live through that. If we only read books or only, learned in theory, you should not do this or that. But we have to actually go through the opposite. We should do this or that in order to learn that we shouldn't do it, or whatever works or doesn't work. We learn through dualities, and we have to live through every aspect of every duality in order to learn And that's the beauty of that perspective, that then we can say none of it was wrong.
Yeah. And all, sitting here, or, any example of where you're at in life and decisions you've made, they're not independent. They're not completely out of the blue. It's an interesting exercise, isn't it, to look back to what caused this, what caused this to come into fruition. And as you mentioned in the D9, what's beautiful as a Jyotishi is that we can look to the nodes in the D9 to see the fruition of this karma. So where is this going? Will it be resolved? Maybe, it won't be like wrapped up in a neat little bow in this lifetime. We're always accruing karma to bring into the next life, unless we're lucky enough to reabsorb into Purusha, pure conscious energy. But the D9 gives us a little window into our path. And this is the destiny question, isn't it? At any moment, we have free will. At every single moment, we're choosing to sit here and talk to each other right now. We could, practically be doing anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
But yet it is all written, as Marianne would say.
Yeah.
It's all in, she used to say it's all in the can. That's a real American thing, isn't it? It's all been filmed. It's all in the can. And I've had loads of conversations with clients about, well, does that make you feel claustrophobic or like you have no agency? Or does that make you feel like it makes me feel like safe and held? And this is exactly how your life is supposed to play out. But this free will piece is so, so important. And again, coming back to Rahu in Aquarius, I have this sense of freedom, in the world now. And
also to quote Marianne again, whose free will is it anyway? Who is that free will? Is that the soul or is that the ego?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, this is why it's so wonderful. When we are like get together and we all have dinner together, like you can imagine the conversation.
Yes.
Or that David Lynch clip on YouTube where it's like, this is me on a first date, and it's like David Lynch talking about all these existential questions about the level of transcendental meditation, and it's like it's so exciting.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. While we're on the subject now, in this episode now, I would actually be so bold and do a little bit of advertisement because, I have already mentioned that I've been working a lot with that Rahu Ketu axis and with different creative therapy methods. And I've created a workshop and an immersion, a real, intensive self-exploration day about that. That has been tried and tested as well, and it's absolutely wonderful. And we'll dive into that in all the depths and all the angles. So it's all on my website, sandrahayes.eu. For anyone who might be interested, this will take place on Zoom, live on Zoom for a full day. So if anyone is interested, please do.
When is it?
It's on the 31st of August. That's a Sunday.
Well, I can certainly vouch for you, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to that. And I also very much look forward to our next session.
Me too. It's been lovely to catch up with you today.
Yeah, you too. And I'll talk to you soon again.
Bye, Sandra.
Thanks for that. Bye for now. You were listening to a podcast by the Little School of Happiness. For more information, please go to sandrahayes.eu, or if you are in Germany, sandrahayes.de.